Hello, welcome to my channel. We have got the star card today, which is often one of the most beautiful cards in any deck, and I've got three of my favourites here. I've gone on quite a deep dive about this song, this Kate Bush song choice today, and I think it adds a really interesting perspective to the shadow side of this star, which I think is sometimes there's a danger of just seeing the star card as a really lovely, positive card, but it has definitely got an interesting, well, fascinating for me at any rate, shadow side. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So just briefly about these cards. So I've got the Thoth here, Ithell Colquhouns, and Mary L. Taro deck. And I particularly, actually, this Ithell Colquhoun is probably my favourite star card of all time. I love how fragile and mysterious it looks. And I think that is an important aspect of the star. It is hope. It is a glimmer of hope in the darkness, but it lacks something tangible. It comes straight after the Tower card, and I've just got the Tower cards for these decks here just to show you the contrast. And I think it's important to see these star cards in that context of coming after this. You know, in the Tower, we have this huge upheaval. I've probably had like a handful of Tower moments in my life. One of the last ones was probably when I had burnout and had to leave a job. And, you know, I'm still like 6 years later, still feeling the force of that Tower, that old structure coming down. And it's something we've probably built up for years. It is something that we have some attachment to. I certainly had, you know, I was very kind of attached to this idea of me being this wonderful English teacher in this difficult state school. And it just did not work. It was just too much for me. It did not work out how I had planned at all. And there was a lot of embarrassment and also, that feeling of loss and sadness. And now me trying to adapt, realising that the burnout was, you know, part of me. I didn't realise I was autistic until that point, so that triggered all that. And now I'm like in a new reality. And the star, that feeling of hope, has definitely been a really important part of the healing. It's quite a healing card as well. I mean, you can really see on this Mary L. I think that's a beautiful star card, that sense of healing. But again, she is remote. There's a remoteness there. Things are looking up when we get to the star card, but it's still, you know, there's still a lot of uncertainty. And of course, we've got the moon afterwards. And I think when we're thinking about, so the star is associated with Aquarius, and definitely like that innovation, those ideas, our dreams, following our dreams, realizing, going back to our authentic self, and that is the reward of the Tower. If you like, after everything, all that inauthenticity has burnt to the ground, we have got a chance to rebuild it. Often going back to childhood, I think that, especially as I get older, that seems to be a place that I keep returning to. Well, what were my dreams? What were my hopes in childhood before my family and my peers and school and society in general, before they interfered with what my dreams were? What was my real sort of authentic self? And there's definitely a sense of going back to that. And the Aquarius is like, they're the non-conformists of the zodiac, so they're great for you finding what you really need, but there can be a little bit of a detachment there. I think though the main shadow side, which I find fascinating, which is going to relate to the Kate Bush song, is that idea of, after a trauma, I think we are particularly vulnerable to projections, to looking for the next new exciting thing. I think some people it's a relationship. For me, as I said, it's been jobs. So one job or one idea of career has failed, And then I've latched on to the next thing, and I've put all my hopes and expectations, far more than any job can take. And in a way, I've been trying to, the tower's gone down, and I've been trying to build it up again as quickly as possible. That's what I get a sense of. And I mean, for some people, that star, that dreams might be, there's parents that put all that onto their children. So the children are the ones that then have to follow their dreams. My dream of being an actor failed, for example, so my child can be that actor, that big star. And if we think of also how we use the term star to mean someone famous, and all the projection society puts on stars, and how that can be a toxic situation for the famous person themselves, how many young, bright stars have actually died because of that toxic pressure. So there's a glimmer of hope here. It's still a beautiful card, but there is a shadow. And, doing this deck, I am particularly interested in the light bit in the unpopular cards and the shadow side of the cards that we can too easily just think, oh, it's wonderful, I've got the star card. I like to see the contrasts and that's what's brilliant about these archetypes, that they are able to embrace so many different sides of our lives and us as people. Right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the song first. Or I'm just going to mention the song before I actually reveal the card, because I feel I'll probably be talking about that for a little bit. I will timestamp it so you can just go onto the card if you just want to see that and more about the song. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the research that I did behind this song. So the song I have chosen is In Search of Peter Pan for a star. Okay. And I've been on this bit. I've read Peter Pan. I've read this book. Well, I'm halfway through this book actually, which is a biography about J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan. And I also watched, and I will link that as well, this rather unsettling drama. I think it was a old BBC drama in the 1970s. It's very well done. I will link that as well. I recommend it. And there was an interview with the writer of the drama, which is brilliant too. As I said, he is himself an incredibly complex character. Quite fascinating, but there's unsettling things about him as well. And I'll try and keep it brief. Now, I've seen Disney's Peter Pan, and I'd never read the book. And I didn't really like the Peter Pan Disney film that much. It never really appealed to me. So, but I learnt more about J.M. Barrie, and I thought I will, and I knew I was going to be doing this. I thought I'll actually read Peter Pan and see from my perspective. And it's quite an odd book. And I will read a passage from it in a minute. Now, what happened with J.M. Barrie was he was Scottish, from a big, poor family. He was the youngest son. He had a younger sister, but most of his siblings were a lot older than him. And around 8 years before J.M. Barrie was born, his his two sisters died. So they were very young. They were, I think one was just a few months old, and the other was a toddler. Incredibly sad. But his parents had another child after called David. And I get a sense that all the grief and the mother's hopes and dreams were then projected onto David, this son. And he was the golden child. He was the favourite. Now, Lisa Cheney kind of implies this is just because he does sound like, he was good looking, he was clever. It sounds like he was good at sport. It sounds like he was good at everything. That he was, he was just naturally attractive child. And poor James wasn't. But I think there was more to it than just that. I think it is relevant that his mum lost those two daughters, and then David came along quite soon afterwards, and maybe that was a way of her giving her hope again. So she'd had her tower, if you like, and then David was her star. He was going to be the one that was going to fulfill her dreams. I think he was, she hoped he would go. She was very religious, and I think she hoped he would go into the church or something. And he was when he was 14 or maybe 13, I think, and James was 6. David had this tragic ice skating accident. And when he died, the mother, of course, was completely distraught. And she had more grief than most of us luckily ever have to cope with. And she just took to bed, and that was the rest of her life in a way, was so dominated by this grief that she never really physically or emotionally recovered. But James then became very protective of his mother. And there was a sense of him trying to, or wanting to, step into his big brother's, James is grieving as well, of course, but step into his big brother's shoes and to replace David. He was now he had an oldest brother, but he was the youngest son. He was the son that was around in the family, and they became very close. He would listen to his mum talk about, and they'd tell stories to each other, and he'd read to his mum, and his mum would say about her childhood. And there was so much kind of in their lives, their lives were so intertwined in a way that J.M. Barrie even said that sometimes he didn't know whether something related to his childhood or stories that his mother had told. And while his mother was alive, all of it seemed to have been about trying to win his mother's love, trying to win this kind of affection. And of course, his mother was in grief. She was traumatised, and she wasn't really emotionally available for him, I would say, or any of his other children, because of all that grief that had never been fully processed. So it's an incredibly sad story, actually, and I think there is that sadness in Peter Pan. So lots of people have said about how Peter Pan, the boy that never grew up, seems to relate to J.M. Barrie's brother David, and that in a way Peter Pan is this wonderful figure, isn't he, like David was, but he's also he's not going to grow up. He is also, at the end, he is locked out of the nursery. He's not able to get back in. So there is a sense also, I think, I can't remember how someone has said it, but he's also a little bit of a revenge on David as well, in that he's shutting the door on window on David too. So this is all informed. J.M. Barrie didn't have children himself. He became very attached to another family. I think they were called Llewellyn Davis. I think I've got that right. And this family, he used to see the children playing in Kensington Park in London. J.M. Barrie would be walking his big dog, which was a St. Bernard, like the dog in the Peter Pan. And, he was probably quite a prominent figure, a noticeable figure in the park. And he befriended both the mother and the children. And there was a very intense relationship. J.M. Barrie was an intense person. He was intense with his friendships. There is maybe an unsettling atmosphere. I mean, certainly if you look at the dramatization, it made me feel uncomfortable. On his fixation on the boys feels strange, even if it is innocent, and there has been some debate over that. If you read this book, it seems to be that yes, he had an intense relationship with the children, but his infatuation was actually with the mother. And J.M. Barrie himself did have a tendency, even though he was married to another actress at the time, to, go from actress to actress, and to develop these intense infatuations, but then to resist getting married himself. So there was this definitely, I think basically he was psychologically damaged from what happened in his childhood. And there's a lot of the Peter Pan trying to get through that, and maybe for him to return to a sense of childhood that he missed out on. He was 6 when his mum became emotionally unavailable to him, basically. And he probably had to take on, more responsibilities than a 6-year-old would normally have to take on. So there's all that in it. So I found it fascinating. I found it fascinating to, I will link all this if you are at all interested as well. And then looking at the song and listening to it again this morning, now I've read Peter Pan, I was expecting it to all click, because it's never, in some sense, it's a song that it's a wistful, melancholic song. It's always a song that I've loved. And when I listened to it as a teenager, I felt I could relate to that longing. But it was not, I'll just clear these away and I'll get my card too. But it wasn't a song that I understood in terms of Peter Pan. And then I was looking at the lyrics this morning and thinking, I still don't know how this relates to Peter Pan the book. And it feels almost like the person singing in this song feels like J.M. Barrie to me. They talks about being poor, talks about so much crying happening in the house, and being in this really sad household, and this wanting to escape. Right, so I'm going to just show you the card, and it's a little bit of a dark card for the star. I've just realised, I've been looking at all these beautiful star cards, and yeah, mine's a bit gloomy, but now you can see why, okay? So perhaps I have done. So this, I love this picture of her looking out on a window, and then I've tried to create the star effect here. I think in Peter Pan, it's second star to the right, straight on till morning. But the lyrics, as written in this book, was second star on the right, which is perhaps easier to sing. But when you hear the song, it's not very clear anyway. Okay, so, and maybe I will still add straight on till morning, because I quite like that line as well, because that gives a sense of direction. But I like that wistful star-like look on her face. Right, so this is what Kate Bush says about Peter Pan, the song. And I'll leave you then to contemplate whether you think what this relates to. Does this relate to the story, Peter Pan? Does it relate to J.M. Barrie? Or does it relate to a personal thing of Kate Bush? Or probably is a combination of all those things. I don't know. Anyway, so she has said, In Search of Peter Pan is sort of about childhood. And the book itself, I think she means In Search of Peter Pan, is an absolutely amazing observation on paternal attitudes and the relationships between the parents, how it's reflected on the children. And I think it's a really heavy subject, how a young, innocent mind can just be controlled, manipulated, and they don't necessarily want it to happen that way. And really, it's just a song about that. Okay, right. So I'll just read again some of that because I really haven't a clue. So the book itself is an amazing observation on paternal attitudes and the relationships between the parents and how it's reflected on the children. And I think it's a really heavy subject, you know. How a young, innocent mind can be just controlled, manipulated. And they don't necessarily want it to happen that way. And really, it's just a song about that. Right, I am thinking now, when I was reading that, I was thinking, you know, I've read Peter Pan. And unfortunately, there's quite a few of the books. So maybe she's talking about another one of the books. Because there were quite a few. And anyway, what else I was going to do was, so maybe I need to read more books now on Peter Pan, but I'm not sure I can. Because I quite enjoyed the Peter Pan book, but I also found it, as I said, there's got a lot of humour in it, but it is, what should I say? It's quite a cutting humour. There is a sense of no one really caring about each other. Perhaps that's what Kate Bush is talking about. You know, the parents get a dog to look after the children, and the children go away for months knowing their parents are worried. And, you know, it's really... And then there's this really odd conversation about the dad at first not wanting Wendy because they can't afford it. And I don't know. I suppose that's where the poverty comes in as well, doesn't it? Right. That is mentioned in the song. So anyway, I don't think I quite understand what Kate Bush means by that, even having read the book. But maybe I need to read another Peter Pan book. If you've read any Peter Pan, let me know what you think. I was just going to read, this happens towards the ending, because I thought this is really sad. This made me feel really sad, this bit. So he's talking about how Wendy has grown up. But the years came and went without bringing the careless boy, which means Peter Pan. And when they met again, Wendy was a married woman, and Peter was no more to her than a little dust in the box in which she had kept her toys. Wendy was grown up. You need not be sorry for her. She was one of the kind that likes to grow up. I love that line. In the end, she grew up of her own free will, a day quicker than other girls. Right, yeah. All the boys were grown up and done for by this time, so it's scarcely worthwhile saying more about them. You see the twins and Nibs and Curly and any day going to an office, each carrying a little bag and umbrella. Michael is an engine driver. Slightly married a lady, so slightly is a name. Slightly married a lady of title, and so he became a lord. You see that judge in a wig coming out of the iron door? That used to be Tootles, the bearded man, who doesn't know any story to tell his children, was once John. And there's that sense of that magic we lose when we grow up, which again I think relates to what I said about the star card, how it seems to be something in it about, sorry, just drop the other cards, something in it about coming back to childhood. Anyway, I think I will finish, or I'll go on and on. Let me know any of your thoughts about the song, or about Peter Pan, or about another choice for the star card. I think this song would have been quite good for the Six of Cups as well now, I think, but I'm quite happy with it as a star card too. Anyway, thanks as always for watching. Goodbye.